Welcome to the Audiation in the Wild podcast with your hosts, Bo Talifer and Eric Rasmussen.
Okay, so what we want to talk about music aptitude. What is the difference between music aptitude and achievement and music achievement? Because I think that's a really good place to start because the two are often confused with each other, and it's I don't think you can understand what aptitude is unless you understand what achievement is. So maybe can you describe the difference between the two to us?
Yeah, music aptitude is the inner potential that someone has to, a potential to achieve. You can't see it, you don't know it without using a music aptitude measure. It's impossible to know. Music achievement is what you do see. Oh, that boy's got talent. That girl sure is a great musician. What you're
And so one of the reasons you're telling us that we can't necessarily know someone's music aptitude from watching them perform, because when they're performing, we're seeing a mixture of, we're seeing their achievement, and their aptitude helps them get to that achievement level. But really what we're seeing is what they've achieved.
Yes. And they wouldn't have achievement without aptitude. And
Sure.
What we should know or note is that everybody has music aptitude. There's no such thing as somebody's got it and somebody's don't. Somebody doesn't.
Yeah. And there is this interesting, we'll talk more about testing and, the danger of a teacher just assuming that their student's aptitude is high or low based off of their own gut feeling and not using a test. But there is this, I think, one special case where when you're talking about the best improvisers that have ever lived, the best composers that have ever lived, it's fair to say their aptitude is probably quite high.
Yes, you can only assume high aptitude when you see high achievement. Like extraordinary achievement means you got high aptitude. Mozart or whoever you want to go, that's the common example. But you might say Pat Metheny or name your favorite musician. So the potential to achieve is something, is something that's developed early in life, especially, and is a product of nature and nurture. So
yeah, which is really interesting because it's not necessarily a solely genetic thing. It's very dependent on the musical environment that you are in at a young age. And if I'm not mistaken, the extremely young age is probably prenatal as well, but 0 to 18 months are absolutely critical.
Absolutely. And then from 3 to 5 or 6 is still very sensitive. And then it becomes harder to nurture an aptitude the older you get, and there's a certain cutoff age. Some will say it's 9, 10, 11, or 12, maybe the most in terms of music aptitude. That's what the research has shown us, that you're only then at that point working with the aptitude you have. You will never increase or decrease your music aptitude. That's what they call stabilized music aptitude at that point. And we know that because people's aptitudes just don't change
after that
age. They,
regardless of what they're taught or how much exposure they have, or
now
their achievement can go up
absolutely
drastically.
Yes.
So no one's saying you can't learn.
No.
Right.
No, but the rate at which you'll learn will be a result of the aptitude and, of course, proper instruction. That because are we teaching to your music aptitude, or are we teaching to your intelligence or other abilities, like the ability to?
I've even seen this with myself, right? Like I'm in my early 30s now, and I'm getting a handle on some of these, whatever you want to call them, higher level jazz harmony things, and they're really in my ear now, and they're my audiation. But I know some guys that went to a local university here, a really well-known jazz school here, and they had that stuff under their belt when they were 20, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't. I wasn't in the same environment. I wasn't at a jazz university, but it definitely seemed. I have it in my ear now, a lot of the stuff, but it took me a lot longer than some of the other people. So I mean, that's a sign that
Yeah.
it's hard to say exactly what's going on because
Right.
I'm not comparing aptitude tests.
Because you could
But
have high aptitude, right? And they could just be extraordinarily high, or maybe they have lower aptitude and they've just worked more or better at what you're talking about, at the
yeah,
achievement
so
level.
teaching curriculum and teaching methods still matter a lot for achievement.
Oh,
Like
for sure.
just because your aptitude's not just because your aptitude's high, if you have a horrible exposure to or instruction, it's not necessarily everything, even though it could do a lot.
Well, yeah, you know what it does? It makes people quit.
When they have the high aptitude.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll talk about well, especially I think it makes people quit, especially when they're born into a culture that doesn't have curriculums designed off of teaching audiation
Yes.
based.
Yes.
Because if your curriculum is very decoding heavy or instrumentally technical heavy, like a guitar and a violin are very technical instruments, and students have high aptitude in their audiations just off the charts, they're not going to enjoy sludging through these things that aren't music to them, right?
Or learning Mary Had a Little Lamb with no so in it. Mary had a little lamb, little lamb, little lamb. Mary had a little... And it's all quarter notes.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
There's no rhythm to it. They simplify it to make it easy, right? But what's easy is, hey, I know how it goes as a kid. Why are you changing it on me? A high aptitude kid will like, what? This isn't Mary Had a Little Lamb.
Another really funny common example. I've run into that one as well. A lot of these like very standard piano method books, they use Ode to Joy because it's a melody that's in major and it's basically all quarter notes, but the last, dun 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 dun. And I love when I was teaching at a music school a few years ago, all the piano teachers used this method that had that song in there.
Yeah.
And some kids they know the song, so they just play the right rhythm at the end of the song and just not read the notation.
Okay, you're talking about that rhythm at the end, yeah.
That rhythm, yeah, and a bunch of teachers would grill them on it and say, no, that's not what's written. But they would be like, the song sounds like this though. And I would never correct somebody if they were playing the
Yeah,
but I don't know. That was a funny example.
You're not reading it. You're not reading it properly. It's like
you're not reading it properly.
Yeah. So I thought you were going to talk about that. Dum 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 dum. That last.
Oh yeah.
Bum ba 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 ba. Like that one.
Yeah.
Because that threw me for a long time. I didn't know it except from my trumpet books, which were wrong.
Oh yeah.
Initially, you're not learning it from the music. You're learning it from the notation, which is anyway. So we can go off on that. So what?
Let's go back to
yeah.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say let's go back to the what's the difference between just to formally say it. What's the difference between development and stabilization? Then we kind of touched on this, but
developmental aptitude and stabilized aptitude are two kinds of aptitude. Developmental, really important. I believe it starts maybe even 2 to 3 months before a child is born. Not the song, but and especially important during those first 2-3 years of life, and critical stage, and then they call it a sensitive stage beyond that. As you get closer and closer to 7, 8, 9 years old, it's really hard. It's like saying you've got some clay. It's really malleable, and by the time you're 9 or 10, there might be some moisture in that clay, but you're not going to manipulate it very much.
Yeah, I've toyed around with the idea, just from reading Gordon's work and thinking about this concept. I almost think of music aptitude, because there's different kinds of music aptitudes too, which we're going to get into. But I almost think of music aptitude, it's like your musical working memory. It's like, and it can be developed to a certain degree when you're younger, but it's not.
Well,
I don't know if it's a 1-to-1.
well, so now you're going to get into the the construct of a music aptitude test. Like how do you form a question to
Yeah.
to have a child respond to something such that that gives you information about their aptitude, regardless of any instruction that they've had. So
Okay, so before we go down into the tests, we got to talk about the different kinds of music aptitude. Like,
yes,
what are the different kinds of music aptitudes?
well, there's tonal aptitude, like
Yeah.
how well you understand tones. Tones being, people say notes, tones. Um,
Yeah.
how those are organized. Then there's rhythms
Yeah.
and how those are organized. And then there's also other types of aptitude, harmonic aptitude, your understanding of harmonic progressions or something of the sort. Then there's also sensitivity aptitudes, and these are like how a phrase ends. More musical, and you might say, well, that's subjective. But when you get 9 out of 10 professional musicians to agree that one answer is better than the other, then you say, well, that's pretty objective then. So like how a phrase might end or how the style of a song, is Mary Had a Little Lamb better this way, bum ba dum bum bum bum, or this way, ba 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 ba. You like bum ba dum bum bum. Which one do you like better? I think most people agree that first way.
And so the way you just gave that example, that is similar to how the aptitude tests are actually done. They give you
Yes.
They ask you to compare two things and ask if the same or different.
Yeah, well, in that case, they're preference aptitudes.
Yeah.
Which way do you prefer to hear it? Do you prefer to hear a melody that goes, or do you prefer to hear this? Which one did you prefer? And that might not be a representative example, but one's
Sure.
musical, more musical than the other.
Yeah.
Uh,
You'll have the sad case of a student who they grew up listening to so much 21st century music. Their answers are actually so off the chart sensitive.
that's a great thing, because then you have to talk about what they call content validity, and it's like, does this really represent the aptitudes? If you would say that a student like that prefers weird stuff as opposed to normal stuff, well, this test was developed, the musical aptitude profile, which is the granddaddy of
Yep.
of really music learning theory. And everything that stemmed from that is what, was the foundation for Gordon's life and why he ended up doing nothing but early childhood.
Which makes total sense, because if your goal is to help improve people's audiation as a teacher, as an educator, and you can make the most impact with the youngest
Absolutely.
kids, right? Your choice of age range that you work with makes complete sense if that's your goal, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Also, just to touch on the sensitivity profile. So many of the times Eric and I have had conversations about teaching in the classroom, and it's different for me than with him, but I still try to take as much as I can. I teach individually. I very rarely teach in groups, and I think Eric exclusively teaches or almost exclusively. You have a couple one-on-one, but you've constantly said that we need to be making sure we're teaching style at the same time as all this harmonic and rhythmic and tonal stuff, because those things are obviously building blocks of music. But if you're not teaching awareness of style and sensitivity and preference for the way the music is actually laid down, so to speak, you're missing something big. I mean, that's the difference between some of these amazing musicians. They just had they had everything that maybe another musician had, but they had just a little bit extra with this style thing. You know, I think of someone like Miles Davis, his ability to move between different genres of music and retain this like hyper awareness of what's appropriate. I mean, that's to me that's one of the things that makes him great. It's not he had all the other stuff on lockdown too, but he had this other awareness of style and awareness of preference and sensitivity that I don't think a lot of people even kind of came close to.
Yeah, no, he definitely liked to expand where he was, or to forget where he was and move on and just recreate, the new baby uh,
Yeah.
that he was trying to birth. So, yeah, that's a hard nut to crack, because how do you measure the potential of someone to do, style, or these other, these other sensitivity. But the best thing before, I don't think we should get too deep into it. Is I just highly, highly recommend probably as much or more than music learning, or learning sequences in music. As much as that book made a difference, the musical aptitude profile did. If you want to think about aptitude, if you want to consider, what is it that we're measuring? How is that different from achievement? And there's a little bit here's the thing about aptitude and achievement. There is no aptitude without a little bit of achievement, and there is no achievement without aptitude. That's the last one's easier to comprehend, but children.
Yeah, because to pass a test, to take a music aptitude test, it's almost impossible that some of that content, like the questions are phrased in a way where if it's a tonal, if it's a chord based thing or a tonal based thing, they're asking you if they'll play three chords or two chords or whatever, and they're asking you if one's different from the other or they're the same. And so some of these things are going to be content. There will be sounds that people have heard before, but maybe not.
Well,
right.
That's the interesting thing. If somebody's only been steeped in 20th century music, will they, is the content valid? Is the content of the test valid, given what our culture's been grown up inside, right? So when this test,
there's a video of Glenn Gould talking about that, where he says, what would happen if we took a baby and it was just Schoenberg from birth, like. I don't think he uses that exact composer, but he's, what happens if it's only this really multi-tonal, multi-metric, just off the charts kind of information dense or audiation dense music? Like, how much would that change someone's vocabulary? Because if what I was thinking the other day, I've been listening to a lot of Mozart lately. Like, Mozart seemed to do pretty well, and he wasn't listening to. I don't think he was listening to anything in an odd time signature, right? But I think he turned out okay. So I don't know. What do we do with that? Like, I think his style, I think that's another thing about Mozart. His style was just, he had the musical style just to on point. His sense of phrases and melodies was just so, it almost just pierced through everything he did. And I've been thinking a lot about that. But yeah, who knows what would happen if... I mean, one thing I know for sure, and I've talked about this before on the podcast, is like, I'm sure a lot of my listening vocabulary when I was a baby came from movies, because there was no musicians in the house. My mom put, kid music on and stuff like that. But we also watched a lot of movies and on repeat.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And so you hear the same patterns, the same rhythms, the same tones, the same harmonies, just, every few days you watch the same Disney movie again. And it's just, and some of that stuff is really adventurous in terms of the content.
Yeah, so if you have to consider the culture of the population from which you're measuring music aptitude. Now, what's cool is that music aptitude profile did get limited, but I've seen some research of aptitude measures being used, in Asian countries and elsewhere, non-Western. Say, but everybody's Western now when it comes to music, pretty much. You can't, you go to France and you hear more hits from top 40s there than I do on the radio here.
Yeah, fair enough.
So I think, but so you do have to consider the culture that you're measuring. So, what styles do develop? What preferences do we have for how songs should end, and
Yeah.
what weight?
And that also plays out in achievement too, though, because you can have a musician who is, a monster bebop player, but they can't appropriately play in a classical style, in a certain classical style, like the Baroque style. I mean, I think a lot of bebop players play Bach too, so it's not necessarily mutually exclusive. But just because you're proficient in one style doesn't mean you have the achievement to understand the musical norms in another style.
Well,
they're not.
There's so many, probably dozens and dozens of aptitudes in music, just music specifically, and we only know how to measure, maybe a 20. So there's tonal and rhythm that we can measure early in life, and then I've added harmonic aptitude, and we can get more into depth about that. But up until a child is 7 or 8, you don't have the capacity to measure more than that. The musical aptitude profile, there are 2 tonal measures. One is melody. So I'm going to play a melody, and then I'm going to play that same melody with extra notes. So if you take those extra notes away, are they similar or not?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a process that children can do, as early as 3rd, 4th grade, likely better at 4th grade. That's what the tests are normed for. That a child can do, and then so that's one of the tonal aptitudes is melody. And what I was saying is that a child can do that without having had any music instruction,
Which is the important part of the test, because if the question could only be answered after extensive training, that's not really what we're on the
right. And that's why all the music in these aptitude measures is unfamiliar. It's composed newly, so that you're not relying on anybody to recognize any melody.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That gives them a jump. So that's the melody test. And the harmony test, I'm going to play the melody in the violin, and I'm going to play that same melody again in the violin. But underneath the violin is a cello. And the cello's going to play a melody, its own melody, like a root melody or a bass line. Well, it's not root melody, but another melody that matches. And then I'm going to add extra notes to that cello line in the second. So the melody stays the same, but the cello part adds extra notes. If I take those extra notes away in the second way, is it alike or different? So, and then there's tempo. So now we're going to go to the rhythm. There's tempo and meter. So I'm going to play a rhythm for you, and I'll play another rhythm. Well, it's actually a melody, but it's the same melody, but it's either going to go faster, go slower, or stay the same, or accelerate, decelerate, or stay the same. And you have to tell me, if the tempo stayed the same, or were the 2 examples you heard same or different. And again, students can take that and score really high without having had any instruction, which tells you the validity of teaching children, this is fast, this is slow. It means nothing. And especially, this is one of my rants, is teaching words that describe music: up, down, fast, slow, high, low, long, short. All that stuff has absolutely zero validity when it comes to helping children become musical. So, and then there's meter. So now I'm going to play a melody, and then I'm going to play that melody again, I want to know if it's exactly the same or did I change the meter.
Will the test actually use those words?
Uh,
That'd be interesting for people to.
no,
How will it phrase?
they
Yeah,
they
because
use I think they do. You need to know the word. This is where achievement comes in. You need to understand melody. Listen
that's
to
what I'm
this
getting. That's what
melody.
I'm getting at. Yeah.
You know, and I want to know if the melody, or does he even say just song? I forget. I haven't administered the map in a long time, but
Okay.
um, uh, but yeah, he might even just say the song instead of melody. Tries to use
Yeah.
as much vernacular as possible. We still need to know what a song is, and song should be
Yeah. I mean,
with words, but it's
song is
not.
fine,
It's
but meter could be a word. I
yeah,
would
no,
assume a lot of young kids have no idea what you're talking about. Maybe even older musicians.
no, but he'll give you an example,
Yeah.
and another example, and tell you the
Yeah.
answers to those examples. And
So
those examples are more important than the directions.
yeah.
Because he makes them obvious that these are exactly the same, and you should mark same, or these are different, you should mark different. And
So what we're talking about here, when we're talking about developmental aptitudes,
no, not when you get to the musical aptitude profile.
so this is what I wanted to highlight for anyone listening. When someone's music aptitude is developing in this critical window and into their into the age of 9 and such, as it gets less sensitive as they get older, are these the kind of skills that they will be better at doing as their developmental aptitude increases? By the time they start being asked questions like, was I played this melody and then I played it again, was it the same or different? Like, basically, did the meter change? Are those the kind of
You're
skills you're
getting
saying are going
into
to change?
how do you train somebody to take a music aptitude test a little bit. Like what kind of achievement or what kind can we teach to the test a little bit is what you're talking about?
Well, I'm not even talking about. I mean, I could see you going down that road, but let's say someone wanted to make the argument like maybe this skill of being able to tell if one thing is the same or different than another along some metric, right? Like, is this meter the same or is this melody the same with extra notes? Someone might ask, why is that not a general skill that you can be taught to do, regardless of the content, being able to tell if it's the same or different? You see where I'm going with this?
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
whole field that I don't know has been well researched. Like
The
what?
reason I think of this is because there are some indications that in other kinds of um, processing, that the human brain does, linguistic processing, logical processing, there are things that could be taught. Like there's this little thing that you can do. So um, if A is the same as B and B is the same as C, is A the same as C, right? Or is C the same as A? And there's been a lot of research around this recently because, apparently we're not going to talk about IQ, we're talking about music aptitude, but I'm using this as an example. People have been trying for a long time to raise IQ scores, and there's generally been nothing that works. It just doesn't work. You can't raise someone's IQ. But this little exercise of training these logical relationships, if A is the same as B, B is the same as C, is A the same as C, you can actually be systematically taught to answer those kinds of questions. And when someone then goes and does a normal IQ test that is devoid of those kinds of questions, they score 15 to 20 points higher on average.
Oh wow.
So this is one of the things I started thinking of, because when we talk about music aptitude, there seems to be some parallels with IQ in terms of there's a developmental window, and we don't really know how to increase IQ after a certain point, or aptitude, musical aptitude, but we can increase content. You can learn a lot of musical content and achieve, and just like someone with a medium IQ can't necessarily raise their IQ according to the research, but they can still learn more things. But that's what I'm trying to draw a parallel here. Is there some way to train these more generalized musical abilities?
Yeah. Well,
I mean,
to now we haven't been able to do that. I tried really hard for a whole year to raise music aptitude scores. And
Yeah.
and children, say first, second, third grade, I measured their aptitude at the beginning of the year and at the end of the year. And there were some children that scored much better, and there's some children that scored the same, and there's a few that didn't do as well. Uh,
It would have to be statistically significant because there could be some randomness.
yeah, and it was
too.
and it wasn't, and also my school was really small, so I only had one second grade, one third grade.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I
No,
didn't have
I
enough.
just bring
I
that
didn't
up
have
too.
enough power to do,
Oh, yeah.
which just means I needed more schools, more children to draw better inference as to whether what I was doing was teaching. But I was working hard to get them to move,
Yeah.
and it didn't.
Which is really interesting.
Even first, second grade, there's more malleable than second, third, or but I think it's already pretty well. It's much. What I would have needed to raise their aptitudes is them to go home and experience music, for another 2 or 3 hours,
Totally. Yeah.
and dance and sing and go to performances and have their parents, sing and dance and play with them and do all this kind of stuff. And then the children with high aptitude would have gotten a lot higher. Children with average aptitude would have gotten somewhat higher. And children with low aptitude might have squeaked out another point or two at that point. Now, if I was doing the same thing, giving them lots and loaded experiences at pre-K and kindergarten, those aptitudes are going to rise up to the level to which they were born.
Yeah.
So there is a natural component to this, a nature, right? That nurture cannot influence. No matter what I do to you, you're not going to be 6'9" and be able to dunk a basketball, right? So
we're going into modern times, Eric. We might have some neurobiological computing power that we didn't have.
Yeah, you pick your sperm donor, I guess, is one way.
Okay, so talk to me about harmonic aptitude. Why do you think it's useful to separate harmonic aptitude out from the other aspects of tonal aptitude?
Because they're different. It's different. You can have high aptitude in harmonic and a low aptitude in tonal. You could have a high.
So we should actually begin there. So just because your rhythm aptitude is high does not mean your tonal aptitude is high. Or just because one's low doesn't mean the other one's low.
No, in fact, if one's high, the other one's likely average.
If one's high, the other one's likely average. Okay, yeah.
And and vice versa.
Yeah.
Now.
You mean like in opposition to if one's high? Like, so if someone has high tonal aptitude, would you put your money on their rhythm aptitude being medium or high?
I put my money on medium.
Both be high?
Put my money on medium.
Over high.
Yeah.
Okay. So having all of it boosted is more rare.
And there are kids that are at the 99th percentile in both.
In both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they're hard to come by.
Yeah. Yeah, but now you're saying there's this other dimension. The harmonic aptitude is in that dance as well.
Yeah, and there needs to be correlational studies to really look at how much variance there is in common between, harmonic aptitude and tonal aptitude, or harmonic aptitude and rhythm aptitude.
And so with your harmonic learning sequence, if anyone's not familiar with it by now. Eric has gotten some ridiculous results with very young children being able to identify chord changes by ear. Sometimes 3 or 4 functions within a matter of a class or two. Sometimes 3 functions within 5 minutes, right?
Yeah.
And you've had I think you've had a good student body in terms of just the amount of people, the amount of children you've been able to put through this, because I use the same techniques when I teach, but I don't get very many kids that are that age, because I teach guitar and most people come in for lessons for me, or a bit older and all that kind of stuff. But what made you yeah, what's made you think of this harmonic aptitude as being more of a thing? I mean, why? How come when you teach people to identify these chord changes using your harmonic learning sequence, it doesn't seem to be improving their scores on something that would be like a harmonic aptitude test? Because that's what you've explained to me. Their achievement goes up from the training, but their ability to absorb new information and make further distinctions doesn't, that power doesn't necessarily increase with the training.
Yeah. Harmonic aptitude is a weird animal among the aptitudes. Uh,
Yeah,
did we already touched on, the 43 items of the, so I didn't create this idea of harmonic aptitude. It's in the musical aptitude profile. It's
yeah,
the
for sure.
melody, the harmony with the two melodies, the staying the same, and the underneath part changing with extra notes. That's a test of harmonic aptitude. So what's really cool? Let's go back to the map for just a second. So
Sure.
there's two tonal, the melody, harmony, two rhythm, the tempo and meter, and then these three preference measures like style, and he calls them weird words that don't make sense musically, but
Okay.
you know, uh, balance is one. Like it's like, does the ending is the ending better than this ending? And it's like he called balance or something.
Okay.
We think of balance as, the cornet's too loud for the clarinets. um,
Yeah. Yeah.
like that. Uh, but what he did with each of those seven tests is give kids instruments. Everybody got instruments. And then 3 years down the road, and I think it goes to 9 years later, he's measuring all of the ways that these children are playing. And is it in tune? Do they have a sense of harmony? Right? Are they able to maintain tempo and style and all these things? You could measure how much this test predicts their achievement, and it
Yeah.
predicts a substantial amount, maybe a third.
And obviously, there's a ton of other variables at play
Oh, well,
because we don't know how much
you're
instruction and how
accounting
much,
for a ton of stuff. How
but it's still pierced through all that.
yes, the kind of teacher you've got,
Yeah.
everything. The system
Yeah.
the teacher's
How many
using,
music
the
classes?
approach, the system. Yeah,
I mean, because I had guitar in high school every day, concert band every other day, jazz band every other day. It was just a music
yeah.
machine in high school.
You'll
But
you'll never show anyone a better research test of aptitude.
hmm,
It predicts far more. So you ask a teacher, oh, well, Johnny, he's the best I have in this class. Well, you give a music aptitude test, and you find out that you got three others that are better than Johnny, and you didn't know it. That's the
well,
value of an
and
aptitude measure. You're going to discover
exactly,
kids like that. And
yeah,
you're also going to discover kids that you want to nurture along more, more patiently, and
yeah.
and and help them along in a different way. Because if you're not teaching to the individual difference, this is the main objective for me of a music aptitude measure. Makes you a better
Yeah.
teacher. And if you're against
And you're saying
becoming
the reason it makes you a better teacher is because you're aware of what this kind of power that
you're
the student has
adapting.
coming to the lesson
You're
with.
not only adapting to Johnny's music aptitude compared to Joe's music aptitude, you're
Yeah,
adapting Johnny's tonal aptitude to his rhythm aptitude,
exactly.
and,
Yeah.
and then harmonic aptitude, and then
And this is where you get into troubles if you have a really calcified curriculum that won't adapt to the student. You're going to be hammering someone. Let's say someone has a high tonal aptitude and a weak rhythm aptitude. Let's just say that happened. if you're hammering that one kid with all this rhythm stuff that you think they should be ready for, and they're just not, you might have to adjust the pace of the instruction. That's what we're getting
Yeah,
at, right?
yeah. You want to
Pacing.
give them something easier to do so that they can still be successful, and give them an easier block to build upon.
Yeah, you're giving them the next block they need in their achievement pacing.
Yes.
It's an appropriate
Yes.
stage. And I just wanted to come back to, so let's say you have a high school or a late elementary school band director. They could think Johnny's music aptitude is high, but in fact they're running a curriculum that is entirely based off of decoding music, and that kid just happens to be really good at intellectually decoding music.
That was me.
And that could hold someone.
That was me.
That was you.
Yeah, I loved the game of doing puzzles and playing dominoes with my mom growing up.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was, there's certain skills that I just like doing.
But then you can obviously get into, you can have a situation where someone's music aptitude is actually very high, and then their IQ is high enough where that when they're taught decoding, it's not really that much of an obstacle to them because there's nothing really blocking.
And that's
them
how
other end of
most
the
music
equation.
educators, that's how they turned out. And they say, well, I'm going to teach that way, but you're teaching kids that have low, say, hand-eye coordination. Say, let's just go high and, hand-eye coordination.
Oh,
that's a
sure.
whole different thing than aptitude, right?
I am convinced that is a thing in and of itself, because it can't be a surprise why,
right? But
some people excel with guitar technically, regardless of
it
their
worked for
audiation.
me. It's going to work for this child, and this child might be the opposite of you in terms of you had both, he has neither, but there's still, I've had students who just love music. I have one girl who's now 10. I've had her since she was 2, and she's still a very low achiever. She loves me and loves class and just eats it up. And at the end of every class, this was a very good class. Thank you, Mr. Eric. I learned a lot from you today. She's the sweetest thing. And,
Sure.
and how can you not love that? And she's getting better. But it's still a struggle for her to sing some songs in tune, as much as I've
For sure.
worked with her.
I've had similar experiences as I teach half piano, half guitar, and a couple drum students as well, which MLT is crazy for teaching drums, by the way. But with the piano students, so many of my students are transfer students that start with this heavy decoding background, and I just throw all that right in the garbage and just start doing songs by rote on the piano and singing and all the good stuff. And man, these kids just love piano lessons.
Yeah.
And I'm not necessarily trying to turn them into professional musicians, but they stick with it for so long when you get rid of the stuff
that's me. I stuck with it with a above average aptitude, long enough that I'm actually a decent improviser some of the time. I want to go back to something
Sure.
you're talking about. So Gordon was very much interested in the music teachers that say, well, I know my students, right?
For sure.
And so he said, okay, well, rate them. Go ahead and tell me who's the best and who's in the middle and who's the worst, right? And, there's all kinds of criteria, and they would write down, they would measure their student based on their, what they saw. They base it on what they knew of the student.
Yeah.
And then they took those scores and they correlated them to the music aptitude profile. Yeah. And there's about at most 10% in common.
So they were way off.
Yeah.
They were just way off.
And the gimmies are the high aptitude kids, right?
But part of the thing that I wonder about this is we've talked about this before, and I want to get into the other part of the conversation about giving aptitude tests to your students. But I've had some students for 3 or 4 years, and I'm very aware of this phenomenon of be cautious when you size people up if you haven't given them a proper aptitude test. But with these band directors, for example, or whoever was it, band directors that Gordon was putting to the test?
Everybody, anybody.
Okay, But if the band director A doesn't have very high aptitude themselves, B doesn't know what the aptitude doesn't know what Gordon's testing for. Like if the band director doesn't know, that we're really looking regardless of achievement, how can they actually differentiate between same and different in the context of meter or in the context of tempo? I wonder though. So if you take a band director who is just totally out to lunch on what's on the map versus someone who's has an MLT background like yourself, where I would venture that you would have if you had a student for a while and had seen them interact with your class, I don't think your results on your intuition would be as off as another teacher who wasn't steeped in this learning. I'm not saying you shouldn't do the test. I'm just saying you'd probably be a lot closer than 10% correlation.
That's curious. I'd be interested. I would like to think not, but or I think so that I would be better. But
Well, I'm just saying if you know what kind of stuff is on the test and you essentially do those things with the student over a period of time, it's not the same as the
that's
part of the
different because
aptitude test.
You can't teach the test. You just can't. We've tried. It's been too many research studies.
Yeah, no, I don't mean to teach the test, but I mean like you're having your own eye on a student for 3 years. I'm guessing you have some idea of if their aptitude's high or low, whether you've done a test. I'm not recommending that as a strategy.
Maybe because I'm only interested in developing audiation.
That's what I'm saying.
So,
Anyways,
but it won't.
Interesting...
It might help me score better than other teachers. Trying to measure their students without the use of you need an objective measure. Because we're not objective humans. We're very subjective so much of the time. If I was, I will not be able to be anywhere near accurate as an aptitude measure.
So with an aptitude test, in terms of how long does this take to administer to a new student? Just for people listening,
right,
you're starting a school year, you got new students.
Yeah. So
how long is this taking to unpack?
All right. We'll start with mine, the earliest one. So I can give mine to 2.5, 3-year-olds. Okay. And they have to be able to sit through a minute and a half of instructions and a minute and a half of examples.
Okay.
Okay. And somebody
to get started?
No. Yeah, a minute and a half to get started, and a minute and a half of the questions.
Okay, so we got a 3-minute. Lap time.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, that's pretty good.
Yeah, that's short. All right. And then Dr. Gordon has tests for 4 and 5-year-olds. The AUDIE test, AUDIE. Here's the AUDIE test. Hello. My name is Audie M. M for melody. I'd like you to learn my special song. Whenever you hear my special song, would you say yes? Whenever you don't hear my special song, would you say no? Listen to my special song and remember it. Remember, whenever you hear my special song, say yes. Whenever you don't hear my special song, say no. Ready? Let's play the game and have fun. And then, right? And it's always do mi so, but it's in, it could be or whatever. It's always the same rhythm.
Which makes complete sense.
And there's 10 items, and so that takes about the same amount of time.
And so, are you doing this? Do you administer this through a recording?
Yes, you can't do it the way I'm doing it. I'm demonstrating it.
Okay.
That's not the way you do it. And so the kids, say yes or no. And then the rhythm test is exactly the same way, except what they alter, not the tones, but the rhythm. So the melody is always the same.
Super interesting.
And then they go, or so and it's always so mi do in different rhythms or the same rhythm. And a kid says that's the special song or that's not the special song. What he found out is that children can't process tones and rhythms separately when they're that young. They have to process it inside the whole as a melody.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you're saying you don't do a rhythm aptitude test by just
and those are the
chanting.
those are the Audi tests. Those are good for, and they can help you understand the difference. You know, if a child's really high tonally, they'll get all 10. High rhythmically, they'll get all 10. Well, you know, you want to up the level of of instruction for them, give them. But my thing about
And when you mean just when you mean level, you mean literally like if you know if their tonal aptitude's high, you're just going to give them more tonal patterns. Yeah,
I'm gonna push them along a little harder.
Sure.
It's still
sure.
it's playful, but I'll give a kid ba 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 ba. They're 3 years old.
Yeah,
sure. And like I wouldn't do that to a kid that doesn't necessarily. But my thing is
important thing to say about that though is that you're not necessarily, if someone's low aptitude or medium aptitude, you're not trying to hold out content from them. You're not trying to hold them back. You're just trying to tailor it so the instruction level is appropriate for them to develop. That's the only reason you're doing it like that.
Yes.
You're not holding back the hard special patterns.
The worst you're doing
because they're not good enough.
Yeah, the worst you're doing to a kid with low aptitude is giving them a chance to acculturate in something.
Exactly, which is, we've talked about this a lot.
Yeah.
Then here's a funny question. Then a lot of teachers might think this though, and this could be one of the benefits to doing these tests if you're teaching in a group, especially. Why don't we just lower the instruction content to the lowest audiator? So if someone has the lowest aptitude, why don't we? Because someone might go down that route to make instruction more equal. Well, I have one kid with a high aptitude, a bunch with medium, and then a couple with low. Why don't we just lower all the tonal instruction down to the lowest aptitude so everyone can progress at the same time? Why is that a bad idea?
Let's put that person who suggested to do that in a class of kindergartners learning, verbs and nouns.
Yeah. Or
the difference between the two.
Yeah.
So that takes us up to kindergarten, first grade. Now, then you can do the primary measures of music audiation and PMMA, primary measures of music audiation, and the intermediate measures of music audiation. My tests works up until 7 years old and might work older, but I figured I'd give up harmonic aptitude after you get to Dr. Gordon's music aptitude measure of harmonic audiation, which is actually called harmonic improvisation readiness record, which comes in about 7 or 8. It's really not quite reliable in second grade as it is in third, and mine's not reliable either, but neither is Audi H. Neither is the Audi melody and the Audi rhythm, the Audi R, Audi H. Audi M.
Sorry, can you say...
Start over. Audi M.
Audi M.
And Audi R. Those melody and rhythm.
Those aren't reliable up to what age?
They're not that reliable. Period.
Well, they're just in general. Period.
Yeah, they're helpful.
Yeah.
But
is the reason they're not reliable there's not enough questions? Is that one
that's
reasons?
One of the things, and then also the instability of the age. Of children to pay attention, because one of the measures of reliability is you give the test again to the same group of kids, and you want to
after a delay,
and you want to see how stable the results are.
Oh, okay. We were just wrapping up with the validity of these tests. The Audi M and the Audi R, getting into.
So I was talking about the reliability of these tests. If you're pushing the students, it might not. All right. So one of the things we should mention about these aptitude tests is whether or not you agree with the purpose of them. If you don't agree with the
Yeah, which is something we were trying to. Oh, I was specifically trying to comment on a little bit. It's not to hold anyone back. It's not to hold content back from people. It's just to tailor the instruction so that they get more out of it.
yeah, you're becoming a better teacher by adapting adapting to what your students need. Uh,
Yeah, no one's saying scour your neighborhood, give everyone aptitude tests, and make a band out of the high aptitude kids. We're not
Although
pushing
that's
this.
but no, but you want to if you find those kids, you want to encourage,
Sure.
you want to get on the horn to the parents or send and highly encourage those, not discourage anybody,
Exactly.
obviously.
I'm not discouraging anybody, but if you have empirical data that says, this kid really has the potential to achieve highly in music, you should just be aware of this. I mean, it would be useful to tell somebody.
Yeah, you
that.
want to encourage it. So those are the two purposes. And if you don't agree with the purpose, or you don't agree with the content, say because you grew up in another culture, and they're not exposed to Western music very often, then maybe you don't agree with the content that's in the test.
I mean, that is a fair point. And
If you don't do that, then don't use the test. And then
I think a lot of it's going to come down to someone's pedagogical alignment. I would be more prone to wanting empirical data if I could get it. That's the whole reason I'm interested in Gordon's work is, this it's based off of data and it has some correlation to what's really going on in people's
without
development.
Without it, you're a less objective teacher.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
you need objective information.
And so this is something that's come up for me, and I'll just say this because I think it's probably it must come up for other teachers. Is that I've been a one-on-one instrumental teacher, and I think in terms of administering the tests, I haven't been giving my students aptitude tests since when they come for lessons. But you were pretty adamant the other week when we were talking about this. The quality of your teaching will skyrocket.
Yep.
You'll be a better teacher if you use these tests. So, I'm just bringing this up because I could see teachers not wanting to give students something like a test before they've been taught anything.
Well,
you know what I mean?
you might teach them,
making people uncomfortable.
You might have a few lessons. You don't necessarily want to do it the first day of school.
Day one, day one aptitude test.
Yeah. So now we were at the primary measures and intermediate measures of music audiation. At this point, you can separate tones from melody and rhythms from melody. So now I'm going to give you two tonal patterns. Are they the same or different? Or I'll give you two rhythm patterns. You were asking how long these things take. They listen. That listening and actually taking the test. The listening part, I think, is 12 or 13 minutes long.
Okay, so it's really not a long time.
But it takes about 25 to 30 minutes to administer by the time you pass out pencils and get names on the paper, the directions and all that stuff. But the listening component, where it's okay,
Sure.
Nobody talk, everybody just, do what you're told for those 12 minutes. That's a lot.
Which is one of the reasons that I've been hesitant to actually do it, because I have to do this either in a lesson with a student that they're paying for, or somehow do it outside of the lesson with a bunch of students at once.
Yeah.
But
I think,
you said the other week, try to frame it in a way to your students like, this will make me a better teacher. If you guys do this, I will be able to teach you better. That's the purpose of this.
Yeah. You need to buy in from the students, because if they don't try, then what are you getting, right? And then also there's always, well, Johnny didn't feel well that day. Well, that's included in the error measurement.
Which is why you need to do the test again. The delay, maybe not the only reason, but one of the reasons you want to do the test.
You can,
more than once.
do it again, or notice that he's, achieving really quickly and has an aptitude that's average or below, then, right?
You
can notice.
just to clarify,
you can notice. So So that
So so a kid might be achieving really quickly in class, but then this is throwing you for a loop because his tests show that the achievement shouldn't be as high, and so you would want to redo the test because he
you can either
probably just bombed
redo the
initial,
test or
just
just note it.
disregard.
Yeah, just notice it.
So because what we're getting down to is you're going to be giving them harder content. If you in class, you might be giving them more of the harder tonal patterns or pushing them a little more in class, and
yeah,
that's fine.
yes. Here's the thing, though, and people don't realize this or whatever. The music aptitude measures aren't the be-all, end-all to tell you what this kid is or what this kid isn't. It's
Sure.
information to be used in conjunction with everything you already know about the kid. Maybe this kid didn't get, he's adopted from a place that didn't get music, or right, or grew up in an impoverished musical area somewhere or whatever. But even anyway, you can understand more of the kid in relation to the results of the test, the better. And you should incorporate all the stuff that you know as a human about this other human that doesn't come out in the test, but you can't know the test results until you give them, unless it's a kid who's got exceptionally high aptitude. You'll notice that because they have high achievement, because you can only have high achievement with the exceptional aptitude. You could always have exceptional aptitude with low achievement, and like that. And so that,
which is the original point we brought up with Mozart and Pat Metheny.
Yeah. So then you got music aptitude profile, which is good from 4th grade to 12th grade and even entering college. Advanced measures of music audiation. Listen to this melody, listen to this next melody. This is for, I think they've normed it down to 8th grade or even younger. Listen to this melody, listen to this next melody. Was it exactly the same? Was there a tonal change or a rhythm change? Never both. And that's the one I took that I got far more wrong than I ever thought when I first took it.
Oh, which one was that?
Advanced music of music audiation.
Okay, I don't.
And that doesn't.
What's the?
That doesn't take that long to take.
What's the test that's in his book? Am I musical? I have it here on my.
I have it too, but I don't. I don't know it well. No.
It's not MAP?
No.
Because I think it says that one's okay for adults to take. Am I
mistaken? Yeah. I can't speak to it. I have it, but I never really studied it or looked at it, and there's no really manual in the book.
Yeah, it's got a CD and it's got a.
Yeah. I can't speak to it. I don't know if it's a shortcut. It's a way to get music aptitude more friendly to other, to people who might not use it, people in the home versus music educators.
Yeah, that's what I think it's.
But I really can't.
Because that's the only one I've ever taken.
I can't speak to it, really.
Okay, that one I did well on.
Yeah.
I think that was the one I got one wrong on.
So what I didn't...
But I've only taken it once. Taking it again would be interesting.
What I didn't cover is the harmonic improvisation readiness record and the rhythm improvisation readiness record. Now, I don't have the second one. But...
Okay.
But the harmonic improvisation readiness record is listen to two things. Again. Same or different. Sorry, I'm screwed up, but it was supposed to be different.
Oh, that was different.
Different is so easy that even the people who score really low on the test get them right. And people that score high on the test get them wrong.
Yeah, we talked
which
about
is
that
a
before,
weird.
Really
yeah, we did.
But because what I see could happen is if you're auditing that very well, it could just sound like the next part of a song. It might not sound wrong to you.
Well, all you have to do is say it's same or different. That's all. Yeah. Same or not same, actually, at this point.
Whatever the one I took had, it was basically full of those.
Yeah.
Right? The one,
of course.
So did I take did I take the harmonic improv
Sounds like
record
it.
then? Yeah, because the one I took was just basically those. It was like 40 of those,
That
and
was
most of them were.
am I in? This wasn't Am I Musical, was it?
Yeah, I think it is because that's the
Oh,
only
it's
one I
in
have.
there.
Yeah,
Okay, I got me curious. I
I
bought
think
it.
there's 40. There's 42 questions. Is that correct? Something like that.
There's
41 or
43.
40. 43. Yeah, that was the one that I did well on. It was just a bunch of
Okay,
those. Yeah, and then I think there. I don't. I can't
I
remember.
have to look at
There's
it.
this. Yeah.
So, but anyway, that's pretty much. I think every measure that Gordon created, and each of them are have been used to predict, um, the achievement down the road, and they all do that, or you can infer that they'll do that because they're the same kind of measure. It's kind of a piggyback validity, uh,
Sure.
where you can assume that if it's the same kind of measure, that it's working the same exact way.
Yep.
But it does require a little bit of inference.
So if you're an adult and you're listening to this and you want to take a test, which one should you take? Because
I
I'm assuming it's
I
some
even
interest.
as an adult, I would take the entire musical aptitude profile, which is 7 sections, and each section takes uh, 15, 20 minutes. You want to spread that out into three. You don't do it all at once. You do 3 weeks with a week
So don't spend half your day doing
week
aptitude
in
tests.
between. You could spread the actually the stabilized. You can spread them out as much as you want to.
Yeah, because it doesn't. The training's not going to influence it.
Likely best to do it within a month, right? And then the same with the primary and intermediate measures of music audiation. There's the tonal needs to be given separately, and
Yeah.
and usually a day or two in between at least, but typically a week is fine.
Okay.
Even
So
2 weeks.
where can we get these?
These are all at
GIA
giamusic.com.
GIAmusic.com. Yeah, probably.
Just search for Aptitude and Gordon. Um,
Oh, that's great.
but they're valuable. To understand them makes you just to read about them and understand them gives you insight into how music is being learned and how it's different from aptitude and how you interact with your own teaching style, the style of a student's learning, and their aptitude. And then there's so many other factors, right, that make teaching chaotic to try to deliver the same way to everybody. Right? It has you kind of blow up doing the same thing for each kid every day, and that you realize how bad we are at doing that, or bad we are at not doing that, at trying to teach everybody to their needs, which opens up a whole Pandora's box, and then you go through life never feeling like you're ever going to become even a good teacher.
Well, it's not even just aside from music learning theory. There's a lot of educators in math who say, like, why are we putting kids in math classes based on their age? It should be based on their mathematical ability. And so if a kid in grade 1 is ready to learn, the grade 4 curriculum,
Right.
why are they not doing that math? And it makes sense in a lot of ways. I mean, you could argue socially, you don't want to put them in a class of people that are psychologically more developed or less developed in other ways, and it's going to separate them from their peers. But in terms of just the raw math learning,
Yeah.
like, why not?
This is where we bring in E.D. Hirsch for a little bit again. But no, I was going to say that although there's the one-room schoolhouse, which was extraordinary for...
I'm not familiar with that.
so that you got all the grades in one room.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And you find out that the older kids are far and away much better at their subject. Why? Because they're also teaching the kids younger than them.
Totally.
Right? So you don't always want all the same. You want the variety of aptitudes in your class, or the variety of achievement levels in a class, because there's so much more value in the diversity than there is in the content that I'm going to deliver to this class because they're all ready for this type of instruction. So and so there's a balance there.
I had a math teacher in high school who would formally do this. We all sat at a table that could fit 2 people, and the class was split, 25 people like that. And he was very open. Like, you will be sitting next to someone who you should be sitting next to. If you're not great at math, you're going to be sitting next to someone who's really good at math.
Awesome.
He was such a sweet guy, and he was just like, this is going to help both of you.
This is exactly one of the things that when it comes to practicality, you've got a chorus of kids, put the high aptitude kid right next to the kids that are not. Right? Do that kind of arrangement versus, well, now we're going to have a select choir and put all the good kids in that.
So wait, you're saying don't put all the kids with high aptitude at the very front of the choir? No, I think mixing it like that does make a lot of sense, because if someone's having problems audiating a melody and there's someone right next to them who's just bang singing in tune, I mean that's perfect.
Yep. All right, I've not had this long a discussion on music aptitudes in a long while.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting us to go so long, but
we're just scratching the surface.
I know it's a really interesting topic, and it's definitely encouraged me to to start actually giving my students some of these tests. Yeah. So
I want to have a lengthy conversation about somebody who really knows the harmonic improvisation readiness record and why that works the way it does.
So this is an invitation.
Yes, I need it's a crazy animal. Why do those 3 items that are not the same negatively discriminating? In other words, the kids that score high get them wrong, and the kids that score low tend to get them right.
Yeah, that's very weird. Yeah, that's always stood out to me. And
the mean, and we talked about this prior, but the mean stays the same from 3rd grade all the way up to high school.
Mm-hmm.
And the standard deviation, there's still the variance around the mean. It's pretty regular.
All right, so get your aptitude tests, folks.
Use them.
We'll be taking 10% commission from GIA. No, I'm just kidding. I have no affiliation with them.
Now you do. They'll report us.
That would be interesting if they saw that their aptitude test sales skyrocketed.
What are the 60 people that listen to us so far?
We're growing.
Yeah, we've tripled in India. We have 3 listeners. Lovely. A shout out to the people that are all over the world: Portugal, and Brazil, New Zealand, Australia.
And we would love to take. I'm thinking eventually I would love to get to the point where we can just have some like a shorter episode of just listener questions about anything related. Implementing this stuff in the classroom, or just your own learning of this.
Send us an email, or we'll invite you to a session that you can be live on with us. That would be fun. Anything would be fun. I just love talking shop. Bo, it's a pleasure. Yeah. Looking forward to the next time.
All right. Thanks, Eric.
Thank you.